But Mr. Ansari, as we speak today, your remarks on the journey of a gentleman of a politician, a distinguished statesman like Dr. Manmohan Singh.
Well, absolutely. A remarkable journey. It stands out as a beacon for all those who care for India. He came from very, very humble beginnings, but never spoke about it, never flaunted it, never advertised it. For him, it was not about himself, but always India first. He will be remembered for lifting India out of the economic misery in 1991. Let's not forget, we almost faced bankruptcy. And he, along with Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, he pulled India out of that economic misery. He was a very humble man, very well-read, very well-respected abroad. I've had the good fortune or privilege of traveling with him as part of the media entourage on several occasions, and one distinctly stands out, where, I saw President Obama, Xi Jinping, and Abe, the Japanese Prime Minister, take Dr. Manmohan Singh aside in 2008, and they spent about over an hour with him, just seeking on his views, his expertise on how to lift and get out of this the economic backsliding that we were witnessing across the world. So that was the kind of respect, that was the kind of towering figure that Dr. Manmohan Singh was. Unfortunately, towards the end, we in the media were very unkind to him. I would go to the extent of being unfair. But the world recognized him for what he was and gave him that due respect. And now that he's no longer amongst us, maybe we will now afford him the place that he rightfully deserves in India's history. His was a stewardship, a vision of India that was remarkable, because his heart beat for the poor, because it was inclusive, it was pluralistic, and he saw India as one. He believed that the only way India can move forward is if we stay united and everybody has a piece of the cake and everybody is a partner in the progress that India was making.
Mr. Ansari, Kartikeya here. Thank you so much for joining us. KV Prasad also is in the studio with me. Sir, can you take us through part of his personal life? What was his routine like? How did he function as an LOP? People generally remember former Prime Minister either during his UPA years or when he was the finance minister. Can you take us through the time when he was in the opposition, or can you take us through the time, when Congress was not in power between 96 to 2004? What was the role he had, and why did Sonia Gandhi develop a strong bond with Dr. Manmohan Singh? I mean to say, why did he come up so quickly despite serving under Narasimha Rao, whom Sonia did not like, and went on to become the Prime Minister? What was the compact? So can you just tell us about it?
Is that question to me, Karthik?
Yes, that's the question for you, sir. Javed Saab, aapke liye.
One of the main reasons was his integrity and the fact and the expertise that he brought to the job. Non-controversial. He didn't have a huge power base. He didn't have a power base for himself, and yet he came in from the outside and India needed a steady hand, an inclusive hand, and he provided it. As OLP, he was effective without being aggressive, without being in your face, without being obstructionist. He felt, and he, along with Pranab Mukherjee, they were in the old guard, and they believed that the best way of putting your point across is through a debate. Parliament is a forum for legislation, for debate, for discussion. He didn't believe in a no-holds-barred opposition. And he used to be often dismayed when the House would adjourn. He laid a huge amount of emphasis on the fact that that as parliamentarians, people must put in, an extra amount of work and ensure that Parliament's time is not wasted. He believed in constructive opposition, something that is out of vogue these days. As Prime Minister, I know for sure, and so would you, Karthikeyan, because we both covered the government at that time together, that he had given explicit instructions that the opposition needs to be taken along as far as possible. When he became Prime Minister for the first time, he was not even allowed the privilege, the right to introduce his Council of Ministers, because the then opposition decided that they must oppose him at all costs from the word go. And he was very dismayed in the fact. He was never bitter, but very dismayed. And I met him just about 5 weeks ago. I continued to be in regular touch with him even after he demitted office. And I never saw him or heard him say one strong word or speak in anger against anybody, even against those who had been blatantly unfair to him, who had rubbed him the wrong way. So that was the kind of a man he was. He was mild-mannered, but a man with a very large heart who believed, he had a larger vision. His vision he thought of India in those big, broad picture terms, and that's why he was very, very different. Not just from the present government, but even from a lot of politicians and a lot of his peers.
Uh, Javed Saab, how did he handle Dr. Pranab Mukherjee? I know I'm asking these questions. I think a part of it definitely you can answer. How did he handle Dr. Pranab Mukherjee? Because he was
With
his
a tremendous,
boss
with
at one particular
yes, he
time.
was. He was. There is no doubt, and that's why he always. If you remember, Pranab Mukherjee, late Pranab Mukherjee used to refer to him as Dr. Saab, and Mr. Dr. Manmohan Singh in return was always very deferential, always very respectful, always mindful of the fact that Mr. Pranab Mukherjee was very many years his senior in politics. And that's why Pranab Mukherjee, let's look at the number of GMs that Mr. Pranab Mukherjee headed. Mr. Pranab Mukherjee's views were always sought, and sometimes his word would be the last on substantive issues. That's what the kind of tremendously mindful of the stature and the experience that Dr. Pranab Mukherjee carried with him. And they had a contrary to speculation in the media those days, they had a very respectful relationship and a very good working relationship, which worked very well throughout the time that Dr. Singh was Prime Minister.